right. Hi, my name's Eric Potter. I'm an advisor with the Fellowships and Advanced Studies office here at Mizzou. I'm joined by Sam Franks. Sam, could you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Sam Franks. I graduated from the University of Missouri in 2016 with degrees in politics and English.
Very good. So,
Very loud
and
truck, I'm so sorry.
no worries. And tell us about your Fulbright year. Where did you go and when did you go?
I went to the United Kingdom, so I ended up going to Durham University, which is about an hour and a half out of Edinburgh in the north, for the 2016-2017 year.
Gotcha.
Sorry, math is hard. And I
So tell
got
us,
my,
oh, sorry, go finish.
and I got my master's in conflict prevention and international peacekeeping.
Very cool. Tell us how you first came to know that the Fulbright existed and that it was something that you wanted to do and to apply for.
Of course. So I found out about Fulbright actually as a freshman or sophomore from Dr. Nicole Monier, who's in the Honors College, who reached out to me and said, we've got a summer program for freshmen and sophomores, which is called the Fulbright Summer Institute. I think you should apply. And I was like the kid from rural Missouri who couldn't afford to do study abroad, but really wanted to go abroad and had like grown up on Harry Potter. And so England sounded great. And so I ended up applying and going in the summer of 2014 to Bristol University. And I did a summer there studying the relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States as it pertained to the transatlantic slave trade, which was just incredible and really transformative. And so I had my eye on Fulbright after that because that summer had been so good. And also, again, I'd wanted to spend time as an undergraduate abroad, but could never afford it. And so I really, really, really wanted to go after.
Right, right. So tell us then about that decision to apply for the full award, what that process was like. Was it something that you had to kind of talk yourself into, or was it something that, I mean, it sounds like you certainly had your eye on heading back, but did you always know that it would be through Fulbright?
No, and I was really intimidated by the UK Fulbrights in particular because we hadn't had someone go in a while, and there was just kind of, it felt like a black box around it in terms of until I came in and talked to the fellowship advisor at the time, who's Tim Parshall. I just had no idea what went into it. And I ended up kind of applying for a slate of fellowships, but really hoping for Fulbright because I'd had the experience with Fulbright. And I'm a public education geek. I'm in the University of Michigan Law School right now. And Fulbright is like the only public scholarship where you get to do these kinds of things. And so it was one that I really, really was hopeful for, but my backup plan was teaching English in Korea through a different program because I wanted to take a break through law school and I really wanted to get abroad without having to pay for it.
Right, right, right. So tell us about the actual application process then. So the United Kingdom is slightly different in the awards that they have. So it's very, well, I guess in terms of the actual essays, those are all the same. But tell us about that process of doing the self-reflection, doing the writing and the revising, and and even just choosing which university, which award, that whole thing.
Yeah, and I have kind of a weird story for this because so for the United Kingdom, you're going for a master's program, you pick a school and then you pick a program and you build your application around that. And I had picked a school in Northern Ireland because my background at Mizzou is in sexual assault prevention. I was really interested in conflict prevention more generally. I knew I wanted to go to law school. And then the Northern Irish government dissolved. And so I had to redo my application like 2 days before it was due. And then when I interviewed, they called me and were like, we see that you applied for this other school. We don't think you'd be a great fit there, but we really think you'd be good at either Durham or St. Andrews. And so I ended up going to Durham. And the way that became useful though was because I spent so much time thinking about like who I am as a person and what my goals are, even though I, especially at like my junior year and senior year of college, had no idea other than like the broad strokes of I want to go to law school and I want to help people and this international stuff seems great. Thinking about the qualities in myself that could lead to that kind of career ended up being useful and transferable because it meant that Fulbright knew enough about me from those essays that they could call me and say, actually, we think you'd be better suited to a program like this instead of that. So that that was really useful.
Yeah. So talk to me about that idea, that kind of self-exploration and identity added onto that experience abroad in Durham. I'm sure you learned a whole lot more about yourself, in addition to what the academic subjects you were studying. Tell me about that experience, especially the Fulbright year experience and how that all tied together.
Yeah, so going in, I really knew that my strengths academically tend to be things like history and politics. I really love English and I got a major in it, but it's not what I wanted to do. And I was trying to think about how I could connect the things that I was strong in academically to kind of the personality traits of myself that are good, which tend to be I'm like very Midwestern at my core. And so I'm good at getting along with people, I guess is one way to put it. But that's a good skill in a lawyer and it's a good skill for post-conflict negotiations and things like that. And so the program I went into, which was a post-conflict studies program, really does think about the politics and the history of a region and how that region can heal after something has gone wrong. But it also did a lot of individual work on what are the kinds of skills you need to build. So we had a negotiation seminar with people from NATO who came in for one weekend. We did a mediation program on the ground in Northern Ireland, which is actually part of why I picked Durham. I wanted to be able to do that Northern Ireland work still. We did a workshop with people who came in from The Hague to talk about how states negotiate with each other. And so all of those things were super interesting and particularly cool for me because my program had 40 people and I think 2 or 3 Americans maybe. But I think 24 countries represented among the 40 people. And so when you're going into these negotiation seminars, it was really interesting to learn about yourself kind of implicitly, like what do you carry with you as an American? What do you carry with you as the girl from a random small town in Missouri? We did one of the negotiation seminars. I was paired with someone and was like, okay, we're going to trick this seminar. We're just going to tell each other what our numbers are from the beginning, and then we'll come to the best result that way. Like, we'll just be honest with each other. And he gave me his number and I gave him my number. And I'm like, oh, it's a trick. This whole process is a trick because there's no way we can get to an equitable solution. Like, that's what they're trying to get us to find out. No, he was lying to me. And just was giving me the wrong number the whole time. And it worked for him because I was like, okay, I guess I'll come up then. That's the only way to do this. And I had one of those moments of just like, I'm really naive, but also like, this is a little bit of a cultural thing. And that we go in being like, we're going to do this. We smile at each other. We're going to do the thing. And the guy was like, I love negotiating with Americans. And I think about that all the time to this day still. Another point, they had us raise our hands and say, like, when you're negotiating with someone from like this or that culture, we talked about stereotypes, but then like, what are things you actually do have to think about culturally? And someone raised their hand from India and goes, I just hate working with Americans because you're so time focused. Everything always has to be on a schedule, and proper negotiations should be about trust and understanding, and you can't force that into 10-minute increments. And I'm going to a law firm after this, and I've done a lot of work in similar kinds of negotiating things in law school. And I do a bunch of work now with survivors of human trafficking who come from all kinds of different cultures. And the time thing to this day is something that I think about when I'm working with people from other places, because we really do, as a culture, have a tendency to hurry. And so just the little stuff like that is the kinds of things that I could never have picked up unless I were in a program outside of the country and talking to people who weren't American, because it really does force you to kind of sit back on your heels and just listen to what people think about you as a culture.
Yeah.
So that has been really cool.
Puts up that kind of cultural mirror so you can see those things that you just hadn't noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So tell me how that has, and you touched on it a bit, how that has influenced your career path. And maybe it hasn't changed it so much as just maybe deepened your understanding of it, but tell me what influence that your year as a Fulbrighter has had on your law school career and the direction in which that has gone.
Yeah, so when I graduated from Mizzou, I was with the first cohort for all the Kinder Institute stuff. So the summer scholars, the Society of Fellows, it was called back then. I don't know if it's still called that now, but I did a bunch with Kinder. My senior thesis I wrote with Carly Conklin, who's amazing. And I thought, okay, great, I'm going to do constitutional law, like when I get out of here. And then I went and did this program, and I came back, and my focus really moved more into international law and foreign affairs, because there's still a lot of interesting constitutional law in that kind of stuff, but you get more of a broad focus. So one of the other things too, my background at Mizzou, I think when you Google my name in Mizzou, it still comes up with this, is all the sexual assault prevention work. That's what I did the whole time. And I was really burned out by the end of it, but I knew that that's still kind of work I wanted to do. And the program really introduced me to new ways to do that kind of work that could be fulfilling. And so when I came to law school, I was looking for that kind of element. And I found the University of Michigan Law School partly because we have a really excellent human trafficking clinic. And so I've done the clinic here. And then this year, I actually did a year-long fellowship with a national nonprofit in human trafficking work. And the law firm I'm going to has a long history of doing really interesting, really important human trafficking work and like suing companies for human rights violations and things like that. And so all of those influences ended up shifting my career, I think, in really interesting, useful ways, and finding ways for me to still use everything that I did in undergrad, but have kind of a fuller picture and a more niche picture, which I think is really all you get as you grow up. You just get more detailed into specific things.
Right, right. So tell me, so as a piece of advice for
Mhm.
students who, because I know as a Fulbright advisor, we're always telling students, have that detail, know where you're going and be able to paint that specific picture. But for
Yeah.
students who maybe don't have a crystal clear idea, more of a general notion, like I want to go to law school and international stuff is interesting. Somebody
Yeah.
who's in that boat, what advice would you have for them as they're looking at Fulbright and feeling maybe intimidated that they don't have the clarity that they need for an application?
Yeah, so I had two professors. I had more than two professors that I loved in undergrad, but two that I frequently went to for life advice. One of them being Carly Conklin, and the other one being Rachel Harper. And she's just excellent at personal statements. And the advice she always gives people is that you cannot write a personal statement that anyone else can write and be successful. So one of the things you have to do to be a writing tutor at Mizzou, or at least that you used to, is write a personal statement for her class, and she would give it back to you and say, "Could someone else have written this?" And that's really daunting, because you're like 18 years old and a million other people have had experiences like you don't know anything different. And so forcing myself from that point on to think about, sure, a million other people have had the experiences I have, but have they interpreted them in the same ways? What are the things about me that are particularly interesting, or what are the things about me that make my voice useful? Why do I think I can be useful for the world someday? And that really helped me think about, even if I didn't know where I was going, at least why I could get there. And so that was good. And I think I have several friends who ended up kind of like the politics track, is everyone's going to law school, and several friends who didn't, which is great because it's really expensive. But I think one of the reasons you can come to the conclusion either way and be okay with it is just really knowing why you're doing the thing, and the knowing why you want to do something will get you really far regardless. So I guess that would be my advice.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your story. And I appreciate you talking with us today.
Of course. Thank you.